thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in the studio today are two of our panelists that you will definitely recognize as friends of the show. So before we get into all the goodies that they've brought to discuss and talk about, let's have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about them. So Rusty, we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Rusty Maulding. I'm a horticulturist, and for the vast part of my career, I've been in the professional landscape contractor world. Just in the last year or so, I transitioned over to public gardening and now work as a site superintendent at Lake of the Woods, part of the Champaign County Forest Preserve District.
So you get to play all day like I do.
I do. It's
Good
wonderful.
time. Isn't it fun? Isn't it fun? All right, John.
I am John Bodensteiner. I'm a Vermilion County Master Gardener. I like to dabble in a lot of things. I volunteer at Schlarben Greenhouse, teach that, and just keep busy doing a lot of different things.
I was going to say, it's hard to put a thumb on all the stuff that you guys have going on.
Yeah,
a generalist.
Once you get retired,
yes.
Once you get retired, then you get to do the things you really enjoy. So.
Yes, that calendar fills right back up, doesn't it? Yes. But the alarm clock stays off, I hear. So
no.
No? Okay.
He's hardcore.
Hardcore. Okay, let's jump in. You guys brought a lot of stuff. So, Rusty, we'll start with you. What would you like to discuss?
So I've got a couple of plant selections to talk about today. And the first we're going to start with is this. I'm going to move this up here in front just a little bit. This is a Baptisia australis. Some people may know it as a false blue indigo. This is a perennial, and there's a lot of really cool attributes about this plant that it's not a widely known plant. You can think of this a little bit like a peony in the garden. So it sort of, you plant it, you let it go, and it kind of just does its thing.
We like those.
Yeah.
We like those.
I mean, it's disease-free, it's pest-free, so in that case, it's better than a peony. So this blooms sort of a light lavender, bluish color, hence the false indigo name. The flower, you might be able to see, is not quite coming yet, but it is. This little piece up here on top is going to be that flower.
Looks like it might. Is it like a really dainty sort of?
Not really.
No?
This guy will get out over time 3-4 feet wide.
Oh, okay.
And about 3 to 4 feet tall. So it's a little bit bigger in stature than like a peony. But the reason I love this is it kind of takes the place of a shrub. And so you can kind of mix it in with your perennials, and it just fills this space. The blue flower will come on a spike here within the next couple of weeks. We actually have some at the Botanical Garden that are in bloom already. It's a little early, and that's a particular variety. But this one, it just, like I said, I can't talk enough about it. It's a native, disease-free, trouble-free, likes full sun. We'll do a little bit of light shade, part sun. Drier soils, clay, into some sand. So it's just, like I said.
This is really versatile.
Set it and forget it.
Yeah, we like the ones that are set it and forget it and can take a little neglect, you know.
It actually prefers a little neglect.
See, perfect. Go get this one.
Yeah.
Excellent. And does it need any type of trellising or support?
Sure. As the branches get up, get wider, it does sort of open up a little bit. It will produce. It's in the pea family, so it's a nitrogen fixing plant. And the branches will droop a little bit, but I haven't found, especially if you nestle it in with other perennials, it works well in both sort of a cottage or more of a natural type setting with native grasses and coneflower and that sort of thing.
Excellent.
For cut flowers too, people that like cut flowers, in the fall it's going to have a black seed pod that is just,
it's really cool.
Really, really cool. And the bees like it too. Once it starts, you'll see the bees in there.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, we'll have to look for this one. All right, thank you. Sure. All right, John, what about you?
Okay, I brought Madam Butterfly here. I'm going to talk to her about her
the
first.
Lovely lady in the room.
It's a cytisus, or a Scotch broom. Rusty and I were looking, and I guess it can be a little bit possibly invasive. We'll find out. I'm going to plant it here in my yard. It was something I found, and I just thought, this is really
It's
neat.
Gorgeous.
And it'll get to be about, I'd say, twice this size, from what I understand. It takes full sun. It's hardy from zone 4 to 8, and it's easy to propagate. So I thought, when they said that, I thought it was that I could take cuttings, but I think it's from the seeds. And
oh, gotcha.
but and the bees do like this. They come in here and actually were crawling inside the flowers, and it was just one of those plants. It's very
definitely a
interesting.
showstopper for
Give it a
sure.
try.
Very nice. Gosh, that's lovely. So you said full sun?
Yeah.
Likes full sun?
Yep.
Do you know, I wonder if it comes in any other color variations. I'll have to Google that.
Yes, it does.
It does.
They did show a couple of, when I looked that up, that were similar and had kind of the same type.
Very pretty. Okay, thank you. All right, Rusty, we've got grasses of some sort.
Almost grasses.
Almost
grasses.
Sedges.
So this next one is kind of a really cool thing. So one of my folks at home, you may remember that one of my interests is sort of native landscapes.
Ah, yes.
And this is actually a sedge.
Oh.
And so they're a little different than grasses. They do have a growing point that's at the base. I'm going to pop one of these guys out here, you can kind of see. And they will have a triangular shaped stem, which is probably one of the best ID features. But essentially, it acts like a grass, in that it fills in space. And whenever you start talking about more of a native style landscape, we're talking about lots of things all happening together, planted very close on center. The sedges are sort of like, you can think of them as a little bit like a ground cover or a filler material. They sort of do the heavy lifting of helping keep weeds at bay.
Okay.
And they sort of weave in between as a matrix all these other plants and sort of just fill up all the gaps so the weeds aren't there. Another added benefit of these is they're one of the first things to green up in the spring. So when you're planting out a lot of things that are going to look fantastic in late summer, sedges do a great job of adding some greenery to the space earlier in the season and are kind of a must to help weave their way through this. Most people will have heard of ice dance. It's a carex or a sedge. It's more of an ornamental plant that has been bred and has a wider leaf and a white margin. Most sedges don't have those attributes, but the great thing about sedges is that there's like a multitude of sizes. There's a great variation on what kind of habit they like. This one's going to prefer, this is Carex brevior or plains oval sedge.
Okay.
As the common name suggests, it likes it a little bit drier. It's a little bit shorter in stature, so 12, 18 inches or thereabouts. Likes full sun, will take a little part sun. And think of this as sort of like along the edges and just sort of weaving throughout a planting that has things like coneflower and asclepias, your butterfly milkweed.
Okay.
You can even plant this with grasses like little blue stem, sort of the whole mixture you're thinking about when you think about a prairie planting. Like I said, there are many other varieties. Sedges aren't particularly well known all the time, and so just look for something on a tag that's going to have the attributes you're looking for. So height, soil conditions. Many sedges do really well in wet spaces as well.
What's the maintenance like on these? Do you trim them? Do you leave them?
Sure. The maintenance on these is like most all your other perennials. In the spring, it's cut them back to about 4 to 6 inches. I think last time I was on the show, I mentioned cutting back a little higher. Something that's only 12 inches tall, you're still going to cut, probably half of the back.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And
Will
then
it do okay in partial shade?
There are certain sedges that will do a little better in part shade, like ice dance, for instance, is kind of a very standard one. It does very well in part shade. There are probably 20 to 30 different sedges that are commercially available. You're going to need to find a good garden center that's going to have these in sort of this smaller packaging. This is a flat, and so it will come in these plugs. So if I want to plant these on 12 to 15-inch centers, it's a lot easier to do that with something this size, and a lot more economical to do that on something this size than to buy gallons or quarts even.
And then you probably get better survival rate than buying the big ones.
Yeah, no, they transplant
just
very
like
well.
anything.
So if you've got a spot in your yard that holds water or is kind of in a dip, would this be something that would fare well?
Many sedges that work great, fantastic at like rain garden situations. So it's going to hold water for maybe 2, 3, 4 days and then go away. There are a tremendous number of sedges that will fill that niche just fine. And actually see, this is the inflorescence right here at the top. This sort of And I can't remember the name for it now.
That always happens when the cameras roll, right?
It does. This little bit on top here, that's actually the flower. So the flower, it's not grown for that. It's grown for the ecological niche that it has and is the filler and just making the whole system work.
Very nice.
Do any of them like full shade?
There are some that will take.
Because I was going to say, those people that can't grow grass.
Carex pennsylvanica, and I can't think of the common name right off the top of my head, but it is one is finer foliage. It actually looks like grass. Can be used in a fairly shade, not deep shade. We're not talking under like Norway maples, but fairly shady areas. It will
and be around some other trees that have filtered sun that still use up a lot of the moisture. That might be it. Like some of them like a little bit drier. That might be something that.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Yeah. All right, John, we're back to you.
Okay, I've had a lot of questions or requests for hellebores. Another name is Linton rose, and they put out a lot of babies underneath the plant, but I have found it very difficult to dig them and have them survive. So I started looking into the seeds. I said, there's got to be some way, being they're putting all those seeds down, there's got to be seed pods. So I started to look, and this is one of them, the seed pod. And you can see they're it's fairly good size. These are still green. What I'm going to have to wait for is they like to split open, and a lot of people will put, like, if they don't want to check them every day, they'll turn brown, and then they'll crack open, and the seeds, so there's 7 to 9 seeds usually, and they will drop. And I found out that the seeds do not store well. That's why Mother Nature drops them, and immediately in the spring, it's the best time to pick them is late spring or early summer.
Okay.
And so I've got some that are, this one here is really got a lot of seeds in it. I've got others, like this is a newer one, and this was really a real pretty pink and white at one time. It's lost its color now, but you can see there's very, very little as far as the seed pods go in there. And then there's another one this is a real dark purple, and again it's got a different seed pod again. So very, very small.
Have you had success with collecting the seeds and growing them from seed?
And putting them and they're a black shiny seed, so it's easy to plant and put them in an individual pot, and that way I don't have to dig them. I'm going to have, they're not going to have that transplant shock. I always tell my students that you're going to notice whenever you transplant something, no matter even if you don't hardly damage any roots, you're going to have some transplant shock, especially now times when you get these 80-degree days and the plants aren't used to it, you're going to get that. And so you do want to plant the seeds as soon as you collect them, as soon as possible. You can store them for a short period of time in a cool, dark place, but there's so many varieties. You know, there's the wedding series, there's the honeymoon series now. So I'm going to try to get as many of them as I can. And these are not, I've picked these just to show, but what you would want to do is let these really, they'll shrink as far as they're really swollen right now. Unless the seeds grow bigger, then they said sometimes you'll think that they're going the wrong way, that they'll actually swell, but most of the time they're going to shrink and then pop open. But if you put a little, they say muslin or cloth bag around each one, and that way you can collect the seeds very easily, but you'll have to still monitor because you don't want those seeds to linger too long, because again, they don't keep well.
Okay, so as soon as you see them, get them planted.
But it's a first, I love these because they bloom in mid-February, late February, and
the first one.
When we're just dying to see something lovely
and the bees,
outside.
And it's something the bees, I've had honey bees and orchard bees actually on them in early March, mid-March, when there's nothing else. Well, even the dandelions aren't blooming yet. And I was out there looking at them, clipping off old leaves, and I heard the buzzing. I said, "What is that?" And here's a little orchard bee down there.
Having a little snack.
And they're great. I mean, they're evergreen.
Evergreen,
and
yep.
they're low stature. They're just, it's kind of a...
Easy, there's no diseases that I
Right.
know of. They're just,
Excellent.
so,
Okay.
one of my favorite plants.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Now we're into tools.
Tools?
We're
Well,
talking tools.
Wouldn't be a show if I didn't bring a tool.
That's true. That is kind of your thing.
Well, there's a tool for every job.
That's true. That's true.
And some are better known than others. And so we're at that stage of spring when maple seeds start falling like manna from heaven. The helicopters, the whirlybirds,
helicopters.
the samaras, they all start falling, and particularly from silver maples and red maples, they will fall. And then if we have the right conditions, they will germinate with reckless abandon.
Yes.
I think one year I guesstimated that I had about 10,000 little seedlings in my yard.
Oh my gosh.
And if you can catch them when they're small, when they're just up, the first set of leaves is out, this scuffle hoe is a great tool to be able to get those with.
Gotcha.
And it's a very simple technique. You sort of just take it and get ½ inch right under the soil surface and just push right through them.
Just mow them down.
Just mow them down. It knocks them off, cuts them off, and does a great job of making it so you're not back there just picking by hand and trying to chop with an actual hoe. This just slides right over the earth. Now, you know, it doesn't work in all situations, but certainly for new seedlings of any kind, if you can take them out with this, that'll do a really nice job of making your weeding life a lot easier.
Okay.
So elm trees, I'm trying to think of some other ones that used to be, get some ash, but any of those weed trees that just or not weed trees all necessarily, but sometimes the neighbor gifts you.
Yes.
Or maybe
extra plants.
Maybe Madam Butterfly.
Maybe.
Could be Madam Butterfly too.
This will help make that life a little easier.
And tell us what that's called again.
Scuffle hoe.
Scuffle hoe.
I've heard it called the chef's hoe. I've heard it's. I always refer to it as sort of like a stirrup for a horse.
Yeah, that's I've heard it called a stirrup hoe.
A stirrup hoe. Yeah. So just.
Okay. So you're not hand-picking 10,000 seedlings in your yard?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay. All right, John, we're going to go to you. We've got a question that kind of goes together with a show and tell. This is from Tom Clark. He sent us an email in asking about how to grow potatoes in a straw bale. So you've got some seed potatoes, and tell us how to do it.
Yeah. I was kind of looking into doing it. I have done straw bale gardening at Schlarberning. I taught the kids some of that. And planting potatoes takes a little bit of planning. If you're going to put them in bales, you have to treat your bales just like you would any planting in straw bale gardening. And that entails the 12-day prep. What you do is you dig a little holes in there, you put some fertilizer and a little bit of soil. You need the soil because of the microbes in that soil. There's millions of microbes in each square inch of soil, and that's what starts to break that down, composting that bale. And so you need to treat that off and on, water it, a little bit more fertilizer, water it the next day, a little bit of fertilizer for 12 days. And at the end of 12 days, your bale should be pretty much ready. Now, you're going to probably put your hand down there, and if it's hot, if you put your potatoes down there, yes, you're going to have cooked potatoes. If it's over, you want it under 100 degrees. You need to get a thermometer. Actually, I like mine about 85 degrees.
Okay.
If it's over 85 degrees, I usually will wait a little bit longer, let it compost a little bit more. It'll cool down. The one thing with straw bale gardening of any type is it's not going to be carefree, because what it's going to be weed free if you have gotten good straw bales where you don't have a lot of grain seed in it. The other thing is they'll dry out very quickly. So you need I put an automatic watering system in mine. I had a drip hose on a timer, and I had it re-water 6 times a day. I only did it for 5 minutes, but that way I knew that they would never dry out completely. I had it at a low frequency. It was just a very low drip, but it's important that you do that. Now, to eliminate that process, what you can do the year before, the first year, is prepare your bale and then plant tomatoes, peppers, or other things in it. And then by the following year, your bale is already ready for potato, and it's kind of falling apart a little bit, but as long as those twine is still on there, and then you measure up, your bale is probably 24 inches tall, and you're going to take a 2x2 and stick it in there and kind of make a hole to about 2 inches to the bottom of the, and you can measure, put it on your stick on the side and say, oh, I got to go to this much stick is showing. And you wiggle around, and then you just drop your potato in there. And again, you need to decide, am I going to use this? This is one of our potatoes that we've got stuck in the corner. It's already sprouted, so I don't have to worry about buying a seed potato, because I know this one here didn't have enough chemical on it. If you buy just potatoes at a grocery store, they've put a chemical or a sprout retardant on it so that they won't do this. Well, this, apparently we had washed this and it had washed off enough, so I could just drop this. You want at least 2 eyes. A lot of people will cut their potatoes, and I like to callus them off, which just cut them the day before and leave them on the counter where they dry off, and then you just drop these in. You do not fill the hole in right away. You just let them drop in there until you see the top of the potato at the very top of the bale. And then make sure that your bale is in full sun. If you've planted something that liked last year, if it was a shade plant, you probably want to move this into full sun. Okay. But the pre-treating, if you're going to use it, and then the third year, you can actually get a third year out of your bales. Most of the time, 2 years is about the maximum. But after to harvest these, you're going to cut the string, the twine. And then the potatoes, you're going to get up to a bushel of potatoes out of each bale.
Wow.
That's always the fun part.
That's a lot of
just watching them all come out.
And usually 2 to 3 holes in each bale, spaced, appropriately. And, but again, 2 to 3 per bale. Okay. Trying to think of anything else. Oh, the sprout should start to show, and then you can kind of push the bale together and fill in, and then that sprout that has come up, they're going to be side shoots that are going to fill that whole bale with potatoes. Again, then at the third year, what you do after you cut it, you just pile your straw that's left over in a pile, and then you just take your stick and work it down there, and then the fourth year you put that all in your compost pile, and you've
got gold
recycled
right there.
You've got black gold.
You've got gold for the next time.
So I think that's basically.
Okay. That's
but
the gist.
The main thing is it's going to take watering, a system watering, whether you use the drip or the other type of hose.
Sure.
And I would put it on a timer so that you don't forget.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John. Hopefully, good luck with your potato growing out there. We've got about 2.5 minutes left. Question for you. Okay. This is from Debbie in Chicago Ridge. She says, my mom has a big yard on a corner lot, and all of a sudden, these fern-looking plants are coming up everywhere. I Googled what type of plant it is, and it looks like an invasive species called tree of heaven. What is the best way to kill or get rid of them?
I love common names, don't you? Because the tree of heaven is so not heavenly.
It's not heavenly.
Not at all. And really, one of the key ID characteristics I like to use is if you break a leaf off or crack the stem and you give it a little sniff, it is a pretty repugnant smell.
Really?
That comes out of there.
All right.
So you'll definitely know you've got a tree of heaven. Easiest way, if you already know you have a stand, there's actually a couple of different ways. If they're the size of my finger or this finger or somewhere in there, I like to take a good sharp spade and just cut off the root about 4 to 6 inches below the surface, and then that just takes care of it. There's no pulling. You just one slice through if you got a good sharp spade. If they're a little bit bigger, or if maybe you've got a lot and don't have the right equipment, the other option is you can put a fresh cut starting. I would say at this time of year, I would wait until about mid-June. Okay. fresh cut, fairly close to the ground, and dab it with some straight Roundup. It's like a paintbrush. Make sure you're wearing chemical gloves if you're going to do that. But just straight, undiluted glyphosate.
Okay.
And that will also, it'll translocate down to the roots and take care of the trees.
So if you've got a bunch of those,
that might
put some time aside.
Yeah.
Set some time aside for that.
Yeah. Yeah. A good sharp loppers and go to town.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else for the good of the order? I think I
had one. We had
we got about 30 seconds.
A 204, number 204, the rose question. She had to knock out roses. She had something eating on the Bayer Systemic Rose Food. Has 3 different things in it. It'll fight the fungus, it'll fight the insects, and it'll also fertilize. And it's systemic, so it's going to draw it up into the rose and do 3 things. She was wondering if she could cut it out. People have had really some problems with knockout roses lately. And
yes, that was Jan Hall. She sent that picture in, and she said if you look closely, you can see that something was just chewing them up. So
rose slug sawfly is what's happening right now this time of year.
Yeah, and
it's not a Japanese beetle. Japanese beetles are going to be late June into early July.
Gotcha.
A lot of times people get those two conflated.
They just see something.
They see something
and panic.
Something's eating.
Something's eating them.
All right. Fine. A little munching's okay.
A little bit, but we want to enjoy them too. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for coming in and sharing your time and talent. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can send them in to us at yourgarden@gmail.com, or you can search for us on Facebook and send us a message there. We'll see you next time. Good night.